Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse, where we discuss the latest DevOps news, AWS announcements, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our SweetOps community, plus a live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. It's December 17th, 2025. I'm your host, Eric Osterman. Real quick, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse sells AWS reference architectures that get you production ready in just 2 weeks. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com, where you can learn more about that. So how can you maximize today's session? First off, our format's very informal. You can engage as much as you'd like, ask questions, and if you're curious about any of our open source tools like Atmos, this is a great place to ask. And for those on the recording, we host these calls live, so don't miss out. Join us live by going to cloudposse.com/officehours, where you just register, enter your email, and you'll get an invitation to our weekly event. So I do have one ask. If you find any portion of today's session valuable, share it with your team. You'll find the recording posted at youtube.com. /Cloud Posse. It'll be posted there in just a couple of hours. So with that said, let's see what caught my attention this week. First thing, a security researcher revealed that he found credentials exposed for an internal system, a GitHub access token that had been leaked and not cleared that was over a year old. So another security gaffe right there. Obviously, those personal access tokens are a real pain in the butt when it comes to GitHub. What we do at Cloud Posse that helps a little bit is we use a combination of GitHub apps and temporary credentials that get generated from those GitHub apps. So that reduces the likelihood that credentials will leak. And the GitHub app credentials are, of course, sensitive, but those can be protected inside what's called a GitHub environment. And GitHub environments can be locked down to branches, and that's how you basically protect your keys to the kingdom. Any questions on locking down GitHub with GitHub apps? All right. Next thing that caught my attention was something was brought up last week. There's a new release of OpenTofu, I think it was 1.11, added a new field to Lifecycle hooks, which is was enabled, but I don't see it. Here, enabled. So this has been a best practice for Cloud Posse forever, but we haven't been able to use this flag because it didn't exist. What we do instead is we create count of 0 when you set a var.enabled to true or false. You don't need that hack anymore. Now you can literally enable or disable a module using a lifecycle hook or a resource using a lifecycle hook. So that's pretty nice without using the count of hacks. Any questions on that?
No questions, just saying that it's so much cleaner.
Yeah, it's so much cleaner, especially if you are just writing your own modules, it's not open source or whatnot. There's this big open question like, how are we going to continue supporting OpenTofu and HashiCorp Terraform longer term if these divergences increase? Obviously, you can use the .otf file, but do you want to maintain 2 versions? And the OTF file doesn't really help if you are still needing to support, for example, in this case, the var.enabled pattern. So have any of you seen if this is making its way into BSL Terraform? All right. Next announcement. Yeah, so the one that is getting the most attention this week in my circles, everywhere I see, is that GitHub announced that they are changing some prices for GitHub Actions. They're reducing actually the cost by up to 40% on or 39% on some of their hosted runners, like the smaller instances, I believe. But the big thing that has a lot of people disappointed is that they are now charging a nominal 0.002 cents per hour of self-hosted runners. Obviously, if you have enormous fleets of runners online, especially online all the time, that number might add up for you. I feel like it's fair, to be honest. GitHub provides just so many free resources, especially for open source. The fact that we can consistently run 500 concurrent jobs and it costs us nothing in our open source projects. I we are really grateful for that. Now the conundrum here is like, why am I paying GitHub if I'm self-hosting the runners? And it's not like they are gouging us for self-hosting those runners vis-a-vis Terraform Cloud. And I hate to say it, Spacelift and similar Terraform Cloud alternatives are pretty expensive when it comes to self-hosted runners, in the order of hundreds of dollars a month per runner. And here they're saying, hey, we're just charging 0.002 cents per hour for that runner. Others have said that, maybe it would have been more fair if they said per job pricing or something. This is where, everything gets, HashiCorp went down this route, right? Like, hey, we're going to charge per resource. And then, that changed how people then architect their Terraform. And then it's, by the other dimensions. And it just changes how you architect or use it. It doesn't actually change what you pay in the end. And then if they end up changing it another way, now you architected for pricing rather than architecting for how things should work. The fact is at 0.002 cents per hour, they are hosting the API endpoints. They are managing the control plane. I think they're entitled to charge for that. And this isn't an immediate overnight thing. This is happening in, when is it? In March 2026, this will go live. Now, runzon.com is a service that lets you very easily manage self-hosted runners. I should clarify that. It's like a very convenient CloudFormation template that you deploy in your own organization, and there is no control plane managed by Runzon or anything like that. But it is the easiest way to do self-hosted GitHub runners. We do that in our reference architecture, and we recommend that to customers. We come from a background of using Actions Runner Controller, and we're not happy with it. Can go more into that another time. But they have a nice write-up of what this actually means. They have a pricing table that shows what it costs, even with these changes, what it would cost to self-host, and it's still enormously cheaper than using Terraform Cloud. So I've seen some posts like people up in arms like, hey, we're leaving Terraform Cloud, or sorry, Terraform Cloud. We're leaving GitHub Cloud because of this. We're going to self-host. And I just feel like it's a little bit of a extreme position based on the pricing. So what this table is telling us is if you use the absolute cheapest EC2 instance, or the absolute cheapest instance of an M7A, then it is more expensive than using this runner type on GitHub Actions. But for basically every other single type of runner type that GitHub offers, self-hosting it is still enormously cheaper. 2.6, 2.6 times, 4.1 times, etc., up to 15 times cheaper. So this is why I don't think there's really much to consider here. I'm pretty sure the engineering costs of switching from GitHub runners to something else will be far exceed what this will cost, other than in some extreme circumstances. All right, other people's positions on that, contradictory or not, it's fine.
Yeah, I called this one out or jumped on it. Just because it was a change in costs. And for me, like instructing people to use GitHub Actions and how to use self-hosted runners, it's just another thing to have to introduce to their calculations, particularly if you're coming into this like uninitiated, right? On the other hand, I totally get it. I mean, like you said, GitHub gives so much stuff for free. Like out of the gate, you can host your code for free. They don't charge you that. You can use CICD for free. They give you that. So if you're going the route where you're self-hosting, you're going to pay a little bit. You're going to pay something for that, whatever it is that you're hosting. Even if you did Tailscale, because as I was looking at this, I came across some Tailscale articles. They're like, you can set up your GitHub runner agent on something that you have in your house, little PC or whatever, and then Tailscale that back to GitHub. You're still paying for power, you're still paying for whatever your internet, you're paying something, right? So tag on a few cents to it to GitHub, just for the privilege of using their stuff. If you're gonna do the same thing, even like a library has free books, right? Quote unquote free. If you're a
Yeah.
resident of that city, county, whatever, you're still paying taxes that support the library system. I mean, I could probably go on and on. All that is to say is I really appreciate how Runzon spells it out here, how that it's really not that much more for this cost increase. And I feel like it's something that GitHub, I mean, maybe they should have done it out of the gate when they offered self-hosted runners, just to say like, hey, this is a service we're providing and this is what this service is going to cost, as opposed to offering it for free.
It's like,
and then people get up and
it's free
learn.
for the next year or something while we, flesh
Yeah.
out. And it's been a good run. I mean, we've had it for free for years now that way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's fair. Now, go on.
Oh, I wanted to mention, I think, and I mentioned it in the chat, but I think that when Zig left GitHub, I think maybe internally GitHub thought about, hey, we've been thinking about charging for this because it doesn't make sense for them to put a lot of support onto something that's free. So maybe this is an initiative to make GitHub Actions better after, the highlight from that.
Yeah.
And if people don't know about that, I can post the link in here, but I think it was already discussed when that happened.
Yeah, I've seen probably 5, 7-ish posts over the past month or so about organizations saying, yep, we're done. We're leaving GitHub for one reason or another. And I can see some of the arguments. Like, let's face it, GitHub has had a pretty bad track record for the past year on stability. Like, I get a lot of coffee breaks because of GitHub status pages or GitHub being out. And I can understand projects wanting to abandon it for that. I'll be selfish, though, in saying I really like that there is kind of a hub for open source. I don't want my open source over 15 different services. I like the social aspects of it, even if it gives, them,
they're still very, very flat, right? So the way that they do development at GitHub is it can be tricky for them to focus on a particular product, even when there could be some bigger enterprise needs. So again, I think that they're still working it out with Microsoft, how they're going to keep this an open platform and keep evolving GitHub,
Did you see the discussion on that post? Was it in their GitHub repo or somewhere where they announced they're leaving? And it was a pretty blunt way, not very nice way of putting why they were leaving. I think they corrected the language over a few commits, but the initial version was pretty crude. It was basically, it's clear that the entire like brain trust or whatever of engineers behind GitHub has left the building or something like that. But yeah, Michael, what were you going to say?
Yeah, sidebar, but related. I wonder if anybody has considered Azure DevOps as an alternative. I mean, it's still out there. If I recall, it's still kind of free. You might have to set up, like your Azure groups or your I forget even what they call them in Azure, but your management of your people and your resources, whatever. But I think if I recall correctly, self-hosted runners on Azure DevOps are essentially free. And I mean, they've got their runners built in just like GitHub Actions. So it could be a viable alternative to move and not be that big of a lift. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking off the cuff here.
I will say from someone that's dealing with Azure DevOps pipelines, you don't want to.
What has been your experience with that?
They're extremely broken in that they also just, the agent pools just keep corrupting themselves. Right now, we're running into a problem. Microsoft has no idea how to fix it, where the agent pool corrupts itself every 2 weeks exactly.
Wow. And so what do you have to do when that happens?
Rebuild the whole agent pool and then reconnect all of the things
Here, create
to
an
it
agent
is
pool.
a complete mess.
Huh.
And also the agent, self-hosted agents, unless you have Visual Studio Enterprise subscriptions, is only get one free hosted agent, self-hosted agent. And it's like $15 per agent per month. So it's not much, but it adds up.
It would have been interesting. I wonder if I wonder if GitHub just said like the per feed is, oh, if you burst over like 10, 5 runners or 2 runners or whatever. So it's essentially free for anybody who's doing self-hosted runners for their own projects or small companies, but everybody using it at real scale would pay, some nominal amount. That's obviously not what they did. I was just curious if that, hearing you say what you said with like the one free hosted runner or something, I wonder if that would have diffused a lot of the negative press on this, or people just love to hate them up.
I think it would have actually, because I think that's one of the big things. Like we were looking at going to GitHub, but since it's broke, it's been put on the back burner to maybe switch over to GitLab instead.
Yeah. The GitLab celebrates again every time these things happen. The other
As
thing,
long as they don't delete the database again.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was insane that happened. How many days were they down for?
I don't remember. I just remember watching it live. That was a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. As part of that announcement, there was mention that this is also prompted by their plans to continue to invest in the actions roadmap, but nothing really stood out as something I was excited about as part of that. Like, I'm guessing this is something exciting for enterprises using Actions Runner Controller. We were not a fan of Actions Runner Controller because you have 2 problems. You got to scale your Actions Runner Controller, and you got to scale your Kubernetes cluster, and you got to scale the underlying infrastructure your Kubernetes cluster runs on, like your VPCs and your subnets, and just such a big problem. So much easier just using the run zone. But the 2 things every single GitHub Actions announcement, there's really one thing I look for: the ability to allow folders, because it annoys me to no end that you cannot move workflows into folders and organize them. If they do that, I'd be good. There was one other announcement related to this. I thought I had, maybe it's in, where was it? Let me check. There was one other minor announcement related to GitHub Actions. The plan for immutable actions, that has actually been canceled. They're going to go back to the drawing board on how they were going to implement this. Here's the issue. So, there's been a lot of concern around supply chain attacks related to GitHub and GitHub Actions. The most notorious one is the TJ actions for affected files that had a supply chain vulnerability. It was really bad. Fortunately, it was caught within, I think it was hours or days of when it happened. So, but immutable actions would basically ensure that, when you cut a release of an action at a version, that cannot be modified. Today, you can, right? Because tags are mutable by default. I think there's some more things you can make immutable tags now, but I don't think everybody sets that up, and it might be an enterprise feature. So immutable actions, the summary is basically we're currently focusing on other features, like looking to build action-specific features from immutable releases. This has been removed from the roadmap, and that means, someday. And next announcement then. Well, perfect segue into the next one. I feel like the post is, I feel like the prompt injection vulnerabilities is a little bit exaggerated, but it is a fair point to be aware of. My understanding of this is if you are using GitHub Actions with Copilot, so GitHub's AI, with workflows that operate on things from public issues, for example, like issue titles, issue descriptions, and that workflow is running with elevated permissions, which basically isn't true, which should never be true for your public repositories anyway, then you are in for a world of hurt because somebody can prompt inject whatever they want into the body of that message, right? There can be stuff you don't even see, right, in HTML comments, but that's still going to be visible to the AI, and it'll take whatever action it deems appropriate there. They were able to show that this actually was able, that they were able to leverage those privileges to perform actions. I would say the bigger problem is that those workflows were able to perform actions. For example, if you're ever using pull request target, bad idea to use that with any secrets in any way, shape, or form, whether with the Copilot action or with your own actions that operate on any information that comes from a pull request. It is the easiest attack vector there is. So that's why I say that if you're already aware of the serious security implications of doing some of these things in GitHub Actions, this isn't any worse than all of those. Just builds on it as another technique, you could say. Questions on this? Anything I misrepresented? Any other takes on it? Okay. Next topic. I was just shared. Looks like some people kicked the tires on Atmos. This was their write-up on the experience. We always appreciate these write-ups, so I wanted to give a shout out. One of the unfortunate things with, so Cloud Posse, we do a lot of things. We have our open source Terraform modules. We have our commercial reference architecture. We have this product called Atmos. And sometimes it gets convoluted, like that Atmos has anything to do with our commercial reference architecture, which this account map thing is related to. And some of the other things like, GDSIC and null label. Atmos doesn't depend on any of that stuff. Those are things that we use through our day-to-day and that we give away. But it's a fair knock that some of these things, are limiting factors, but they're not limiting factors of Atmos. So overall, I thought it was a pretty fair write-up and appreciate it. So thank you, Code Factory. Next, yeah, so the other thing that my LinkedIn was a buzz about was the sudden sunset notice for Terraform CDK. CDK being an effort. So CDK, this is not related to the AWS CDK, nothing's happening to that, right? Terraform CDK was an implementation of the CDK for Terraform so that you could use language primitives in all the major supported languages that they had, like TypeScript, Python, Java, C#, and Go. And, for a lot of developer-centric teams, this was nice because they could continue developing infrastructure code in languages familiar to them. But as they say, they just failed to achieve product market fit. I don't think there was enough adoption to continue the investment in this. Obviously, this is a whole business and product built around that called Pulumi, right? They've done the same thing, not on CDK, but their own framework with compatibility with all the major mainstream languages out there. So what this means is that it's already been archived, December 10th. And there is talk of a fork. There's a tentative fork happening by Terra Constructs, as mentioned in this Reddit thread. So Terra Constructs is builds other constructs or primitives on top of Terraform CDK. Did I implement? Yeah, Terraform. And the whole project was based around this. If you go to, where was this? I clicked on their fork. Where is this? Let me go to their project instead. Terra Constructs. TerraConstructs.dev is their site. So I think their take is they're just building on top of this with more constructs to make it easier to use CDK. It's a relatively new project, but they are now potentially looking at forking and maintaining that fork for the Terraform CDK. So if you're affected by this, we'll post the links for this later, and there's a good Reddit thread here with others discussing it. My take on it, yeah, I was never a fan of the CDK-TF abstraction. Because one of the main reasons you want to use a proper language is also for things like using the debugger and getting a native experience. And this is really just code generation. So using a formal language for code generation. And I think that's why it added a level of indirection that I don't think solved the underlying problem. The underlying problem isn't the problem with Terraform, the language. The underlying problem is with how you architect the Terraform to begin with so that it is manageable. And that's some of our opinionated ways of doing things that we promote through Atmos, our framework, and through our component ecosystem that we have. That's how we've successfully been able to scale and manage Terraform for many, many years now. And that's why I think that the language is not the problem. I think it's an architecture problem. Anyways, thoughts on CDK, TF, thoughts on what I just said, anything else? All right. And yeah, the other one that everyone was talking about this week is that Terraform Cloud is killing the free plan, and can totally understand that. I think the part that might be a real kicker is if you are using it for the state backend. Yeah, that's not going to be free anymore. So moving your state out is a little bit of a pain. Obviously, there's a lot of options. This particular poster, and I cannot testify to this if this is true or not, they are asserting that they calculated their bill would go from $0 to $15,000 annually. So it's a pretty big jump. Any comments on this one? Let's see here. And Michael shared a link here. Let's see what that's about.
Yeah, this was kind of going back to the discussion around GitHub Actions, and they're actually rolling it back. I mean, if you look at the timestamp on the bottom of the screen here, 36 minutes ago. So this is like literally hot off the presses. That even while we're discussing it, they're already, rolling it back. So I haven't read all the details on this, but who was it? Dan shared it in the Slack. So I just shared it here to kind of include it as a part of this discussion as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unfolding live, play by play.
I know, it's crazy, right? So it may be the case that they do something like you mentioned. If somebody comes up and says, "Hey, give them 2 runners for free, 2 self-hosted runners for
Yeah,
free, or 5, whatever the threshold is. And if you go over that, then you got to start paying, this fraction of a cent per minute. So
yeah, yeah. It's respectable, right? I really feel like Microsoft is trying to do the right thing by the community, by GitHub. I think they see themselves as somewhat stewards of all of this, and it's nice to see that they're soliciting this feedback, even though I was okay with the first announcement.
yeah,
But
the
but
yeah, and I would hate to see. I don't know, and this is just me ranting here, so you can edit this out as you see fit. But I would hate to see like the open source community or members of the open source community, as I say members, specific toxic members that might come up and say, with GitHub, you should give us everything for free, whatever, whatever. Well, what if they just took it all away? What if you didn't have a
yeah,
GitHub?
right.
What are you going to do then? Because it's
Yeah,
not a privilege. It's something that they are offering as a service to people who want to use it, And some people, they have needs that cause them to need to pay for the service. So the folks that
yeah,
are mad because they can't get stuff for free all the time, I would like to tell them to take a hike. You gotta pay to keep the service up and running in the end.
yeah,
So anyway, rant
exactly.
rant over.
Yeah, I would say, and it's your rights to express your opinion are proportionate to the amount you are paying.
Right?
So you can still have an opinion, but it carries very little weight based on the $ zero. Zero times anything is zero. So, um, well, thanks for sharing that or bringing that to my attention. I'm just looking here. So one of the positives with ADO Azure DevOps is, I guess, free unlimited Git large file support. That's interesting. Did not know that. And now you don't need to walk back your classes that mention free self-hosted runners, Michael.
Yeah, that gives me probably another year or so to make updates. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, content stays evergreen for another year. And Zoe mentioned that that he started using uh, yeah, the enabled feature flag. All right. Any other cool announcements that we can discuss this week?
I think the other one that I shared in the office hours was Replit is introducing their own learning platform, and they're offering it for free out of the gate. I mean, I don't know if this is another uh, potential, rug pull or whatever the case is, but the link, if I recall, if I go
Are
back
they
to
were
the,
they bought by Stripe back in the day, or is that a different?
I can't recall, but it's learn.replit.com
Okay.
is the site that I was offering up, and yeah, it looks like it was. Or
Oh, Stripe
Stripe
is
has
not
okay, I
acquire.
was looking too far
Okay,
down.
this is a different one. I'm thinking of something else. Anyways, yeah, learn.replit. Okay.
Yeah, and so I know one of the DevRel guys at Replit. He does a great job producing content for them. Most of it goes to YouTube and LinkedIn, and now they have their own platform where they can do pretty much whatever they want to. But I'm sure like their programs will incorporate the Replit platform directly, to kind of get you embedded in the system itself. And Replit's cool if you want a web-based development environment. It does the job very well for that. So I think it's kind of cool that
We'll
they
have to
have their.
we have to take a step back here.
Sure.
I admit I don't know what Replit is. Is
Okay.
this like Lovable or based on
No,
the?
Replit
Okay.
is like I forget the name of the platform, but it's an IDE. It's a cloud-based IDE. Uh, and
Okay.
basically you can pick your language and they'll build the IDE for you to support that language out of the box. So you don't have to install anything. You could go in there and say, I want to start working on Python, and they'll set you up a Python environment. They can connect it to a GitHub repository or GitLab for that matter, I believe. And so everything's integrated right there in your browser. They've really taken a charge into integrating AI. So they may have, and I'm pretty sure they do have like Lovable like or V0 like capabilities. And with this learning platform, it just gets you more embedded in their environment, right? Because if you go in, somebody coming in off the street, say, hey, I don't know how to use this thing. I want to build an app. And if they have the course content that says, okay, hey, here's how you do it, start up an IDE and Replit, then out of the box, they got you,
Yeah.
the learning is free. I'm sure you got to pay for well, no, you have to pay they have different, like compute VM sizes, and you can pay for bigger ones that stay always on and all that kind of stuff. Because basically you're developing in a little Docker container that spins up when you start, it spins down when you're finished, or you can get some that stay on forever so you can actually run services off of their platform. They have auth built into their platform, so you can include that in your app. They support databases. And I mean, I'm not going to make this a commercial
It's
for Replit, but anyway, I think it's just kind of cool that
have you been playing around with it, it sounds like, or
I haven't used it lately, but I have worked with college students where the professors use Replit as the learning platform. And so basically it's easy to share your solution. Like you build something, you share a link, and somebody's got your stuff ready to go, ready to run right out of the gate.
yeah.
GitHub code spaces is very similar. I think Replit's a more polished version of that in a platform.
It makes me think of another post. I didn't add it to my list, but it resonated with me. The argument was that AI has reduced the cost of software development by 90% or something.
Ah, yikes, yeah.
And you could see that, what it used to cost to just create a prototype like that was, $10,000, $20,000. Now you can do that in an afternoon yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was trending on Hacker News. Yeah, it's the cost of software just dropped. All right. Any other interesting links or things, or any questions we can get answered today?
I wonder if everybody's already checking out for the holidays.
Yeah, it's coming. My parents just arrived from Sweden, so yeah, my holiday season has just begun.
I don't know. I've been exploring more tools. There's nothing that really there's to highlight. I mean, I guess I will mention this for folks who might have. Um, oh yeah, Crush has got several new updates. I really do like them, but
What's your daily driver these days?
it's switched back and forth now to Crush and Goose, only because Goose has they've done more work on recipes, and they're now pretty nice. So I feel like sometimes I can't quite direct something with a prompt, or I just don't know how to write the prompt correctly. I was debugging specifically, so you would find this entertaining, Eric. I have a prompt for actually taking components and from Cloud Posse's library and then transmogrifying them to other sort of client repos as I'm just trying to get them to work with or without, or sometimes optionally with Atmos. Sort of different things happen, right? And it's always small little things in the prompts that don't work quite right. But what I noticed was so the way that Goose does this, they let you start a session, chat and prompt your way through getting something done, and then turn it into a recipe, if you will, which is a prompt with arguments. So, and I can get the docs for that in a second because I think it would be it's been fun so far to use. And
We have
I
some
think
early Claude skills here that we've been working on. I don't know if they'd be interesting for you to test out and provide feedback. We haven't announced them yet, but they are public in our docs under snippets, Claude skills. So,
oh, neat. All right, I will try those out.
As we're talking, I'm currently updating those. So we'll have a newer version I just tried out, was able to develop a bunch of components really quickly.
super
Oh,
cool.
that's perfect. Yeah, I think that I've been getting better and better at crush prompts for basic stuff, and they've been very fast. And I think I said it before, but really like Minimax for you can tell
What was that
Crush that,
last
hey,
one? Mini?
Minimax M2 is a model.
Oh,
So I've been actually putting that into Crush, and it's been the cheapest so far and very fast. And you can turn the reasoning completely off with the prompt mode, and then it just kind of blazes through requests, which
what do you
has
find
been
your
really
use
helpful.
case for that?
Usually it's for well, so here's some common ones I have just in the last week. We use trunk a lot at Masterpoint. And so when I'm going through trying to get different validations working, I can put down reasonings for, say, let's say I'm working on a dev environment. So I don't need to worry about X, Y, and Z. And I can feed this into a prompt, and then it just automatically goes through and ignores the different things that are related. But for the ones that aren't related and they are actual issues, it will do its best to make a plan for, hey, this is what you should do to actually fix these different findings from trunk.
So
And
when there isn't really much complexity to the ask, like just
yeah,
simple replacements or changes, then you can lower the reasoning.
right. And
Okay.
it's sometimes just a huge time save when I'm pulling in other modules that other folks have worked on, or there's lots of false positives. For instance, with just using any of the modules in Cloud Posse, it'll say, "Oh wow, this S3 bucket doesn't have versioning." When I've completely turned versioning on by true, it just can't inspect the policy directly, right? It doesn't know that that policy is getting updated later in the module. But it's things like that that you can codify, put into into a parameterized prompt, and then it just saves you sometimes 15, 20 minutes. Multiply that by
Yeah.
maybe 5 new modules today. It saves you over an hour or two.
Very cool. Michael, I saw you had your hand up for a while. What were you going to ask or add?
Yeah, I had another topic. I didn't want to
Oh, okay.
take up space on. Oh, I guess I have forgotten I mentioned this one too.
Yeah. Mark Tamsky brought it up as well. So yeah, do you want to talk about this one or give the synopsis?
Yeah, I'll put a pin in my other topic. It's way off topic, but I did want to talk about this one. Yeah, if you're on Bitbucket, then if you got stuff hanging out there, they're going to start cleaning it up. And I think what they don't mention in this particular article is the history of Bitbucket going all the way back. And I can't remember when they started, but they came out of the gate or not too far out of the gate offering free private repositories well before GitHub offered free private repositories for free accounts. You could get private repos if you paid for it, like you had an enterprise account or a developer account or whatever the case is. Bitbucket just lets you create them for free. So a lot of businesses went to Bitbucket for their proprietary stuff, right? But then
That's true. I
GitHub,
even did that back in the day. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I still work with companies that have Bitbuckets. And this is how this came to my attention. Somebody was like, "Hey, what about our stuff?" And I'm like, "Okay, I'll check it out." But then after GitHub, started giving us free repos, and again, going back to how they give so much stuff for free private repos, people jumped ship from Bitbucket to GitHub, but they never cleaned up their stuff, right? So Bitbucket's been carrying around all of this cruft for years and years and years. They're hosted on AWS. I'm sure they're S3 bills, even though they're probably putting this stuff on ice, archiving it as best they can. Because there's even another feature, I think, where they had before this, that if your workspace or repo hadn't been accessed for some time, they would archive it. You had to request for it to be archived. Basically an S3 unfreezing,
Yeah.
right? but now they're getting to the point where they're like, hey, we're just going to start getting rid of this stuff. And I mean, they're giving lots of heads up. If you still have the email account where you can get the notification to access your old repo, right?
Yeah.
You'll get this notification and they'll start cleaning stuff up. And I think it's the better for them just being stewards of their platform to keep it as performant and as cheap as possible for them to operate. So I'm
Is
glad for
this
this.
is this public and private or only private?
I This is at the workspace level. It's not even at the
Mm.
repository level. So the way that Bitbucket is set up, you have a workspace and your workspace contains your repo. Just like on GitHub, they call them organizations and your organizations contain your repos. So in this case, they're looking at the workspace level. And if the repositories, well, like that first bullet, if it's just empty workspace, boom, they're going to get rid of it or, deactivate it, get rid of it. And then if the, after that, if the repositories haven't been accessed over 6 months, then they're going to start archiving them and removing them and so on and so forth. So it's everything inside a workspace. It's not even public or private repo at that level.
Which makes me think about, again, going back to GitHub, it's remarkable. Like I come across projects where like they haven't been touched in 10 years and they're still there. They're still public. They're still paying for it. Thank you.
Yeah, they're still hauling around those bits, and some, S3 storage or whatever block storage Microsoft is offering them. But yeah, they have to manage it. If you expect for it to be there and you're not paying for it,
this is where we need, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but we'll need like Wayback Machine at some point for open source dependencies.
Right? No, that's for real.
Which you get with Artifactory or so forth. All right. What was the other thing you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, and if anybody else has anything else to talk about, feel free to jump in and interrupt me because I don't want to hog the mic. But I was really surprised. I mean, I think you're talking about AI agents, kind of had me thinking about IDEs. And I had this rare case where I was working with a Jenkins file specification, like a pipeline document, right? And I wanted to format it, just very simple formatting. And I was surprised to find that the editors that I was working with, I can get an AI agent to format it, but I'm just thinking right click format and it does it, based on a template specification, something like that. Come to find out that the editors I was using, Zed and Cursor, did not have anything built in to kind of handle that. I think they could do it for Groovy maybe. Jenkins file is a subset of the Groovy specification, but it's different and they couldn't do it. So I was like, well, maybe IntelliJ, which is a editor focused on the Java programming language, maybe they have it built in. Installed IntelliJ, tried it. It doesn't do it out of the gate, but there's a plugin that you can use that will do it for you. There is a cost to the plugin. And again, going back to
cost.
Yeah, you have
to format your Jenkins file.
Yeah, you have to buy a plugin. You have to buy a subscription to a plugin, and it's an annual subscription. It's only like $15 a year or something like that. And I mean, God bless the developer that made it. He needs something, right? But even with that plugin, it offers a free trial, I think like 7 days or something, and that didn't do it. So I was like, well, crap, what would it take to develop a linter, a formatter for a DSL, format? And I started kind of going down that rabbit hole, talking to AI, and I guess there are Go libraries and Python libraries that will assist with this. Back in the day, I would have looked at Yak maybe and some other tools that work with language formats and everything. Anyway, TLDR, I was just wondering, has anybody ever developed a formatter for a very specific and sort of off the beaten path language type, like a DSL very, very more specifically?
Yeah, interesting question. I'd like to know what the state of art is for that.
Yeah, because the other bit that I would give to it, again, this is all coming from my AI. I didn't know any of this right off the gate. It proposed the libraries that can read language specifications, but then you also have to find the language specification itself. And I guess Groovy doesn't necessarily provide a format that's easily portable, but there are, like, again, talking about open source authors who have created their own Groovy language specifications, and you basically feed that to the library, and based on that sort of bundle, then you can start your development for your own specific processor. And so that's where I kind of left it. I was like, okay, I can see the library, I can see the
Yeah.
language specification. I before I jump in and start developing the actual code itself based on this platform. I was just curious if anybody had done something similar.
I went down this path in a similar way for something else related to Atmos. I wanted to have an Atmos format command that formats all your stack configurations in YAML consistently, and realized just how freaking complicated it is to format, because a lot of the libraries out there are designed to read the data out of it, right? But I want to preserve the comments. I want to preserve folding. I want to preserve how the author originally did, broke out what they wrote. But then I also want to indent it or want to add line breaks in certain places. I think I finally figured out how to do it using. I found a appropriate library, but I think there is no generalizable way of solving that other than writing a lexer and then coming up with your own formatter.
Yeah, and I learned that similar point that you're saying you want to keep the stuff, and that's the difference between an abstract syntax tree or AST, where they just get the intention of the language and they drop everything else because it's not important, and what is called a concrete syntax tree, where they actually keep everything that has to do with the intent and all the metadata, I guess, for lack of a better word, that goes along with it. Because that's kind of the problem that I was looking at, as I started to read all this. I don't want to just understand what the code is doing. I want to understand what the code is doing and then format it, in a way.
Yeah.
But I want to keep everything else that kind of came along with it. And that's, I guess, and again, this is all me, what I've gathered from AI. So AI makes mistakes. Please check for validity. But it called it a concrete syntax tree.
Yeah, interesting. For Python. Interesting. All right. Well, learned something there. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Let's see. All right. Any final topics to discuss today, or interesting links or questions?
I mean, I guess for those who use SourceHut, they're proposing increases to their prices. That was a little bit earlier this month, but in case anybody uses SourceHut, make sure you check that out. I'll put a link in the
Yeah. If you're using JetBrains and Atmos, one of the guys on the team whipped this up, Ben, and is looking for feedback. I don't know more about it than that.
Yeah, please note the admonition at the top. It's heavily in progress. It's heavily in progress. Essentially, it's got a little tool window where you can see all your stacks and the instances of them. Command clicking works through imports, which is a nice to have. And I'm working on syntax highlighting. And then if you've used the Helm plugin before, it kind of renders your Helm templates for you. And I'm hoping to get that going for anyone using templating, but that requires a little bit more work behind the scenes. So.
Yeah, is this where you wanted like a server mode for Atmos you could interact with in this query?
Yeah, I think that would be pretty easy rather than running Atmos behind the scenes, which I don't think I think that works for JetBrains plugins, but it won't work for a Visual Studio, I think.
Okay. All right. Is anything in the change log? Yeah, a lot of interesting things coming out in the next release. Should be any day now, today or tomorrow, in Atmos. We'll talk more about those, but in the next office hours. One thing is, if you're doing a lot of templating or dynamically constructing values in Atmos, which we see is commonly done by a lot of our users, then the file scope locals will be a nice improvement for you. Just like in Terraform, you can now specify a local section. This is not deep merged. The scope is local. And speaking of ASTs, we parse the AST related to the Go templates here and evaluate them in the appropriate order so that it works the way you would want it to work as a human, if that makes sense. We are introducing a new literal YAML tag. In the past, you had to write these crazy expressions like this if you wanted to have literal Go templates that get passed to Terraform. Atmos does interpret Go templates and evaluate them as Go templates. Now we're introducing the literal keyword just to make it cleaner, so you can just write it this way. And this won't be evaluated as a Go template. Oh, I love this one. This is so cool. With the next release of Atmos, you can just run Atmos Terraform plan and not know anything else. It will prompt you for, hey, which component do you want to apply or plan or deploy, etc., and which stack do you want to do it? And it'll only show the stacks that actually have that component, making it a very easy user experience to get started. We've been investing tremendously in the DX for Atmos, and this is one of those things. If you don't like this behavior, you can disable it with a flag through the Atmos configuration. You can just set that you can disable interactivity. There's a flag also to enable it or disable it on the command line. Pretty minor ones. And backend provisioning is also something just to, this has already been released, I believe. I thought we showed the version here where it was released, but so for backend provisioning, you can now have Atmos automatically actually create that backend. So, hey, Terraform Cloud, taking away your backends, your free backends. Now this with Atmos, you can automatically provision that backend with S3 is the supported type right now. And it works based on your current backend configuration that you already have in Atmos. All you need to do is add a provision block with a backend and enable it. And we provide all the CRUD functions, so you can manage that backend through Atmos. So Atmos Terraform backend create, Atmos Terraform backend destroy, etc. are all functions, or all command arguments you can run. All right, well, that takes me right to the end of office hours. I'm going to wrap things up. Thanks all. We will be back next week, same time, same place. If you want to catch this recording or share it with your team, you'll find that at youtube.com/cloudposse just in a couple of hours. If you ever need any support, Cloud Posse offers a huge open source ecosystem. We pay for it, or we survive through support, right? Just like Red Hat and other open source companies. Consider sponsoring Cloud Posse through some support. Go to cloudposse.com/support for options there. We have our weekly office hours. That's what you're listening to right now. If you want to join these live, go to cloudposse.com/office hours. We have our YouTube channel where this video is hosted, and then our Slack community. You can register at cloudposse.com/Slack. We participate in the office hours channel, the Atmos channel, AWS and Terraform channels are pretty active in that community. With that said, see you guys next week. Take care.